Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Imagine this scene. It's a crisp April morning in Warren, Michigan. The sun is just beginning to rise, casting a golden hue over the quiet streets and the sprawling auto factories that define this town. You're an auto worker at the Stellantis Warren truck plant, coffee in hand, ready for another shift. The routine is familiar, almost comforting. You know the drill, the faces, the rhythm of the assembly line, but something's off. The usual buzz is gone. Instead, co-workers cluster in confusion and frustration. The air is thick with uncertainty, and you can feel the tension rising. A supervisor announces, "The line is down, you're being sent home, indefinitely." The words hang in the air, heavy and disorienting. This isn't a drill, it's a layoff. The paper in your hand makes it real, and the weight of the situation starts to sink in. For 1,000 workers, this became reality. The shutdown was blamed on an engine shortage from Mexico. A single component missing, and the entire operation grinds to a halt. Suddenly, the global supply chain that keeps the plant humming has failed, and you're left in limbo. The intricate web of suppliers and manufacturers has a weak link, and it's snapped. Economic policies and trade disputes have landed right in your paycheck. The abstract becomes personal, and the impact is immediate. The promise of steady work is replaced by anxiety and uncertainty. Your family feels it too, the ripple effects of a disrupted livelihood. Stellantis's engine shortage sounds simple, but in auto manufacturing, nothing is simple. Every part, every process is interconnected. Every part, from screws to engines, is part of a vast, fragile network. A delay in one area cascades through the entire system. A hiccup in one country ripples everywhere. The global economy is a delicate balance, and today, it's tipped against you. For Warren's workers, this wasn't just economics. It was a personal crisis. Canceled plans, anxious calls to the bank, and a future suddenly in doubt. The stability you once took for granted is now a question mark. As you drive away from the silent factory, you wonder, how can this happen when we're told American manufacturing is booming? The disconnect between the headlines and your reality is stark and unsettling. The pain didn't stop at Warren. What happened there was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would ripple far beyond a single city or a single plant. The shutdown was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Each closure, each layoff fit together to reveal a much bigger crisis unfolding across the auto industry. Layoffs spread across Michigan and Indiana, 900 more workers sent home. Families in these communities suddenly faced uncertainty, wondering when or if they'd return to work. In Windsor, Ontario, a van plant paused for 2 weeks. The shutdown didn't just affect workers, it rippled through local businesses, schools, and neighborhoods. In Toluca, Mexico, a facility idled 2,500 workers for a month. For many, this meant a sudden loss of income and growing anxiety about the future. The auto industry is deeply interconnected. A single disruption in one country can send shockwaves through factories and supply chains around the world. A car sold in Ohio might have an engine from Mexico, a transmission from Canada, and electronics from Asia. Each part, each worker, is part of a global web. There's no such thing as a purely American car anymore. Every vehicle is a product of international teamwork and cross-border collaboration. Suppliers were hit even harder. When the big factories stop, the smaller parts makers are often left with nowhere to send their products. Canadian shutdowns alone idled up to 12,000 auto parts workers, many in small, vulnerable shops. For these workers, the impact was immediate and severe. When big automakers stumble, smaller businesses suffer most. Local shops, family-run suppliers, and independent contractors all feel the shock. This widespread disruption clashes with the triumphant rhetoric from politicians. The reality on the ground is far more complicated than the headlines suggest. While leaders tout a manufacturing boom, workers across 3 countries face confusion and anger. Their daily lives are filled with uncertainty, not celebration. Economic policies meant to help seem to be causing chaos instead. The intended benefits are lost in the turmoil of sudden closures and layoffs. For tens of thousands, the renaissance feels more like collateral damage. The promise of revival has for now become a story of hardship and loss. While workers were being sent home, their futures uncertain and paychecks suddenly gone, a very different story was being told in Washington. The Trump administration painted a different picture, one of optimism and resurgence. insisting that American manufacturing was on the verge of a historic comeback. In March 2025, President Trump declared a historic victory. Automobile plants are being built at levels we've never seen. His message was clear: the country was witnessing a manufacturing renaissance, and American workers would be the biggest winners. The administration's message was simple. Tariffs on foreign goods were forcing companies to build in the U.S., launching what they called a new golden age for auto workers. The promise was that these policies would bring jobs roaring back to American soil. The White House pointed to a string of big announcements, each one touted as evidence that the strategy was working. Stellantis reopening a plant in Illinois, Hyundai expanding in Georgia, and other automakers making headlines with new investments. Honda, for example, announced it would shift Civic hybrid production to Indiana, promising hundreds of new jobs and a boost to local economies. On paper, it looked like a winning streak. Stock prices climbed, and headlines celebrated the so-called factory boom. For workers in the Rust Belt, the idea that tariffs could reverse decades of job losses was powerful, almost intoxicating. Many hoped this was finally the turnaround they'd been waiting for. The administration framed it as simple: tax foreign cars, get new factories. The formula was repeated again and again, easy to understand and hard to argue with. Every new plant announcement was amplified as proof of success, with ribbon cuttings and press events broadcast across the country. The message was relentlessly positive, creating a reality where the auto industry seemed stronger than ever, and hope was in the air for communities long battered by layoffs. But for thousands of laid-off workers, the reality didn't match the headlines. Behind the celebrations, many still waited for the promised jobs to materialize, wondering if the boom was real or just another political mirage. Was there really a factory boom? Industry experts say not really. Most new investments were expansions, retooling, or reopening closed plants, not building from scratch. Reopening a plant is good news, but it's not the same as breaking ground on a new one. Hyundai's Georgia investment expanded an existing facility. Honda's Civic hybrid move was a shift between North American plants. The celebrated Belvidere reopening, scheduled for 2027, no help for today's laid-off workers. The so-called boom was a slow continuation of ongoing projects, not a sudden surge. Political rhetoric oversimplified a complex reality. Automaker decisions are planned years ahead, shaped by many factors. Claiming every positive headline as a tariff victory ignores the real story. The truth, the boom, was more illusion than fact. The United Auto Workers Union's response to tariffs has been complicated. UAW President Shawn Fain vocally supports Trump's tariffs, calling them overdue justice for decades of job losses. Many union members share his frustration, seeing tariffs as a way to force companies to reinvest in America, but not everyone agrees. Many laid-off workers blame tariffs for their own job insecurity, arguing that in a global industry, tariffs just raise costs and risk more layoffs. The union is divided. Leadership embraces economic nationalism, while many on the factory floor feel the pain of disrupted supply chains. This split reveals a labor movement at a crossroads, torn between nostalgia for protected industry and the realities of globalization. The debate is far from settled. Tariffs sound simple: make imports expensive, and companies will build here, protecting American jobs. But modern manufacturing is a global web. A Detroit-assembled car might have parts from Mexico, Japan, South Korea, and Canada. Tariffs on one part raise costs for American factories, making U.S. cars less competitive. The result? Supply chain chaos and higher prices. Stellantis blamed an engine shortage from Mexico for the Warren shutdown. While they denied a direct link to tariffs, new trade barriers create uncertainty and delays. When parts don't arrive, assembly lines stop. Who pays? Companies, consumers, and most immediately, workers. Higher costs and falling sales often lead to layoffs. The painful paradox: policies meant to save jobs can end up putting them at risk. It's a high-stakes gamble, and workers have the most to lose. The reality is far messier than the slogans. The Trump tariff strategy followed a very different approach under President Biden. Instead of tariffs, Biden's administration used massive government investment and tax incentives to boost electric vehicle (EV) manufacturing. Over $200 billion was invested in EV-related manufacturing from 2000 to 2024, with over half announced after the Inflation Reduction Act. The goals secure the future of auto jobs in America, but the EV transition has been rocky. Many investments have been paused or delayed, and automakers have scaled back EV plans due to weak demand and high costs. So workers are caught between two strategies, tariffs and incentives, yet still face uncertainty. Two administrations, two philosophies, but the same instability for workers. A factory layoff ripples through the whole community. Suppliers lose their biggest customer, leading to more layoffs. The shock spreads. Diners, grocery stores, barbershops, and realtors all feel the pinch as families tighten budgets. Property values and tax revenues fall, straining schools and services. A single closure can dim an entire town. For workers, it's not just a lost paycheck, it's lost stability and identity. Good union jobs vanish, triggering personal crises, missed mortgage payments, drained savings, and deep anxiety. The psychological toll is as real as the financial one. These are the human costs lost in debates over trade policy. When politicians argue tariffs versus incentives, they're deciding the fate of towns like Warren. The stakes are painfully real for millions. The auto industry crisis has exposed a deep divide over the best path forward. On one side, economic nationalism. Leaders like Trump and UAW's Fain argue for tariffs and buy American policies to protect jobs. Canada's Unifor Union echoes this, warning of China's growing threat. The argument, without protection, North America's auto industry could be overwhelmed. On the other side, critics say disentangling from global supply chains is impossible and self-defeating. Pitting American, Mexican, and Canadian workers against each other only weakens all. Multinational corporations exploit these divisions, driving down wages everywhere. The fundamental question, double down on protectionism, risking higher costs and disruption, or embrace globalization and build international worker solidarity? The Stellantis layoffs show there are no easy answers. For now, workers remain caught in the crossfire, their futures uncertain as leaders gamble on the next move.